Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in for our 10th virtual webinar. I'm Maria, and I'm joined by John and Anong from our wonderful YouTube team. We'll give folks a few minutes to hop on here, and we'll get started in a few minutes.
Gus. Hi. How are you?
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining in to today's webinar. I'm so excited to have you all here. I'm joined today by John Ruxton and Anand Mittal from our YouTube teams, and we're going to talk today about all the things that you need to live stream and produce your webinars. So without further ado, let me hand it over to Anang and John.
Hi, everyone. My name's Anang. My counterpart above me is John. We are both SPMs in Washington, D.C. for YouTube, and we both sort of help people in the civics arena, that is government officials, people who are in the third party like civics arena in terms of activists or political parties and campaigns, help figure out YouTube in terms of best practices, but also talk about sort of what are the best tools, not just in terms of software and best practices, but also in terms of hardware, what you can use to produce better video and to create better content. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, in terms of video production, one of the this is me. This is that's Anang. That's my name. I'm an SPM at YouTube, as I said. This is John, so we're gonna get right into it. So the disclaimer I did want to share with you all is we are talking about some products and third-party, software and hardware, but we are not going to be. This is not an official endorsement by YouTube, Google. These are just products that we have found useful and helpful in our own personal uses or even professional uses. So, in terms of background, like I've been doing video since I was 17. So I also went to film school. So in that sense, a lot of this stuff I've used myself, and so that's kind of where I'm coming at because I've used these products in my own life in personal and professional use. So one of the first things I did want to say is in the civic space, you definitely want to think about your video format. What kind of video are you creating? What kind of product are you going to be working with? And in that sense, then you choose your hardware and your software based on that. So if you're creating cinematic, scripted, pre-planned video, you're going to be using a different kind of product. There's going to be a different kind of look, and you're going to have a different kind of feel to the final product compared to something that was more on the move, something that's related to a press conference or an event or a ceremony, where you're not really thinking about it in artistic terms. Nothing's really scripted, so you have to go with the flow and you have to keep moving. And so that really is important when you're approaching what kind of video am I creating, what kind of content am I creating. Definitely think about that first before you do anything else, and then approach your hardware, your software, your tools in that sense. But having said that, one of the first things I did want to share is sort of bring you all back to the beginning, which is one of the top photographers in the world and possibly the most well-known photographer in the world is Ansel Adams. And Ansel Adams shot his best work in the 1930s without Photoshop, without any kind of digital technology. It was all analog. He was shooting wet plates, and his photography is so well known. People still buy prints of his, and in fact, people still do workshops where they go around the locations that he went in the American West and try to replicate his photos. And as I said, Ansel Adams didn't have Photoshop. He didn't have a digital camera. He didn't even have a DSLR. He just used wet plates. He sat in these locations. This is a very famous photo from the Grand Tetons and that he took and that people still buy and hang up in their houses. And so he just sat in those locations and waited for the right moment and waited for use the tools that he had and sort of created the imagery through that. And one of his very famous quotes is, "The single most important component of a camera is the 12 inches behind it. That's your eyes, your brain. How you see the image matters more than how sort of the equipment that you have." And so that's really important. And I'm not saying what you're using doesn't matter, what your equipment has, that's sort of irrelevant. It is relevant, but ultimately what you choose to do with it is what matters more than, if you have a $100,000 camera or a $5,000 or a $100 camera. So definitely want to make sure that you guys are aware of that and keep that in mind. So if you see somebody with $1 million camera, you can also create those images these days. I mean, technology is so much cheaper and so much more widely available than it used to be, 100 years ago or even 20 years ago. So having said that, if you are doing video and if you are in this field, again, sort of a little bit of my background, I've worked for third-party civics organizations that do activist work. I've worked in the United States Senate twice. I've worked on campaigns and I've worked on ad campaigns as well. So definitely, in that sense, having been in those kind of situations where you're going from choosing $1 million camera, $100,000 worth of equipment to, going back to work in the Senate, which I did in 2018. I worked for Mitch McConnell. And so from there, going immediately down to a basic DSLR and nothing else, maybe like a tripod kind of a format. So that's where my experience is. And out of all of those experiences, what I've really realized is you have to keep things simple. And so how do you keep things simple? These are some of the things that I found helpful in my own use, in my own life, in professional life. So having a format. What's your format? What file am I shooting on? Is this file going to be readable by my computer? Is this file going to be exportable? Is this file going to be easily importable? Are you going to have to worry about a lot of codecs? So definitely figure out whatever equipment that you're using, whatever you're filming with, make sure to use a file format that you're easy with. If it's, one time I legitimately, I used a cinema camera. I rented out a cinema camera and, did not figure out how to use the files until the next day because, I'd shot with it, but then I literally couldn't import it until the next day because there was a lot of extra, importing software and those kind of things available that I just didn't have familiarity with. So definitely do not pick something that you're going to be unfamiliar with that you have not tested out. So, in my case, at least, especially in today's era of digital filmmaking, the MP4 H.264 format is the most popular and will continue to be at least for the next, I would say at least for the next 5 years. People might say different. H.265 is also coming up. So MP4 is just a file container and H.264 is the codec. It's a very easily compressible codec. So that's the one that I like. I think that's most cameras. If you're filming with a DSLR, you might get MOV files. Sometimes you get AVC HD files, but typically most of the newer cameras, what they're going to give you out is an MP4 file. So just in terms of that, that's what you should stick with. Exposure again. If you're filming if you're filming to sort of edit the video after the fact, when you're changing the color, you're changing the look of it, I would definitely say film in a neutral mode. If you are filming in a sort of a ENG, sort of a news gathering mode, then I think you can just stick with the look that you have that is in camera, and that's going to be then the look for the final format. But if you are sort of filming to sort of correct it later down the line, and you maybe you're not filming in RAW. If you're filming in RAW, you can obviously correct it down the line. But again, that involves more significant post-production. But again, if you're sort of being very mobile and on the move and you don't have a lot of time to grade, but you do still want to have a little bit of ability, I would say film in a neutral mode. And again, that depends on your camera, that depends on your equipment. I always slightly underexpose depending on where I'm at, what I'm using. So even here, I'm right next to a few windows, and I would definitely sort of underexpose if I was filming this with a cinema camera or with a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. And definitely want to emphasize this. Make sure to color correct in camera. It's really, really hard to color correct after the fact. It gets really annoying, and it really sucks when you have to merge pieces of footage together that look, one looks blue, one looks green, one looks yellow. So definitely want to make sure to color correct, and you can do that either with a white card. Always have either a white piece of paper with you or a white card with you, or if you're wearing a shirt, like I have a white collar, so I would aim my camera at my white collar and color correct using that. Definitely especially for exposure, definitely it's better to adjust in camera than adjusting it in post. So want to emphasize that. Frame rate wise, again, with the way mobile filmmaking and digital cinematic filmmaking is going, most people go with 2997 or 30p, whatever your camera says. If you have a more advanced camera, it tends to say 2997. Some people also go with 60p. That's again more in the news gathering situations. But yeah, 60p is also helpful. If you're wanting to film a lot of B-roll and you're sort of filming a lot of slow motion video, more cinematic video, then yeah, definitely 60 frames per second or 120 or however higher your camera can go. But in terms of a base film frame rate, just 2997. Again, depends on where you're filming. Some people like 24. I'm not a huge fan, and honestly, with the way things are going on YouTube, most creators just stick with 29:9:7. Um, yes, aspect ratio. I've had this question a few times. Should I do square because of this, because of that? Should I, honestly, again, having a base layer, keep things simple. Film in widescreen and then crop if you have to for other formats, other platforms, but always film in widescreen, 16:9 aspect ratio. Definitely does not hurt, and again helps your eye figure out how to film, how to frame. But yeah, definitely film in widescreen. 4:3 is you're just gonna be hurting yourself down the line if you need to again go to widescreen and then you're cropping it down this way versus cropping it down this way. Resolution wise, 4K. People have 8K cameras. Honestly, again, you're just keep it simple. Film in 1080p. You can always export it in a lower resolution later, and if you have to upres it slightly, it doesn't hurt. But definitely 1080p would be your basic thing. In terms of again talking about post production, if you're filming in 4K, be ready to spend significant amounts of computer time, processing time, and import time, and also drive space on importing a 4K piece of footage that's going to be on your drive. Are you going to really need that piece of B-roll? Are you going to be using it if it's just for a one-off piece of B-roll? Do you really want to fill up your drive with like a 10 gigabyte 4K file that literally films like 5 minutes of footage? So definitely think about that when you film in 4K. Do you really need to film in 4K? I would just say stick with 1080p. Concentrate on the technique, concentrate on your style, then maybe think about 4K. So keep things simple, as I said. In terms of equipment, what kind of equipment should I have? You should at least have these basic pieces of equipment. You should have a DSLR or a mirrorless video camera. You should have a tripod. That's always helpful. You should have an on-camera light. Again, you may be entering into situations where the light isn't up to you, so you at least want to have one light. You want to have an external microphone. Internal audio is always you're always going to get some level of buzz or a hum because the camera is working on so many components to make sure that you have a good image, that the audio is really not worth it getting it from the internal mic of the camera. So always want to make sure you have an external microphone. If you're doing interviews, you have an external lavalier microphone, or for the most part, I would suggest going with an on-camera microphone, an external microphone, a shotgun microphone, whatever it is. So definitely in terms of base video equipment, you should at least have these just to start out. In terms of cameras, what kind of cameras should I have? So many options, so many questions, so many things that you can do with a camera. Definitely, when I was starting out, 2008, 2009, the 5D Mark II had come out, and that was like the first like DSLR that could do video, and it did amazing video. And so full frame is a really big buzzword right now. A lot of people would just want to buy full frame and want to shoot in full frame as if that, sort of creates a more cinematic look. Totally understand that, but definitely in the sense of creating sort of a beautiful picture and very sort of depth of field, full frame is amazing. But I would caution against, again, think about the Ansel Adams quote. It's always about you. It's not about your equipment. So I do have a little graphic here that shows you what full frame looks like and the differences between the sensor sizes. So you have Micro Four Thirds, which is really popular as well. APS-C, which is Canon's sort of cropped sensor as well. And then this is the full frame sensor. But again, does not hurt. I have a GH5S. I have a Micro Four Thirds camera myself, and the GH5S is amazing. But yeah, definitely in terms of cameras, a mirrorless is really in right now. So I would highly recommend using a mirrorless camera because it's just easier. It's a lot better for video production. If you have money for a more sort of cinematic camera or a ENG camera, definitely you can go with those. But if you're trying to do a sort of a semi cinematic but also sort of very portable setup, a mirrorless camera is your best friend. And so in terms of mirrorless, for full frame, a Sony A7 III, very popular right now. You can find it on Amazon, you can find it on B&H, you can find it on a lot of places. Sony A7 III is like the king of that. So many people have done so many amazing videos with that camera, and it also takes great pictures. The GH5S, which I own myself, and a few lenses, you can definitely do that. GH5S has a lot of GH5 or GH5S have a lot of different different codecs, different abilities. It's a really workhorse, powerful camera. You can also get a converter for the Micro Four Thirds sensor, so you can use your older Canon EF lenses on that, which I've done myself. Definitely the GH5S in the Micro Four Thirds category is great. If you're doing a lot of vlogging, I have definitely found, if I was to suggest like a basic camera to anybody who hasn't used like a mirrorless or hasn't used sort of a lot of cameras before and just want a really basic camera that sort of still does the job and it still looks good, I would definitely recommend the Canon M50, which is a mirrorless APS-C camera. It's definitely cheaper than the A7 III and the GH5S, and the lenses are also cheaper, and it's just going to be a lot more compact and a lot more helpful. It's even got that flip out screen, so it's just so much easier for vlogging. Would highly recommend the M50 for people who just don't want to break the bank or don't want to buy like really expensive pieces of equipment. In terms of DSLRs, I think because we've had so many mirrorless cameras enter the field right now, I would not, if you're doing video and if you're really only doing video, I would not recommend getting a DSLR that has a video component like the 5D Mark IV or 3 or 2. I have a Mark II myself. Those are more for photography. And the reason that they started to market those cameras, DSLRs with video capability, was because they could, back in the day at least, or so we've heard, is that you could avoid paying taxes on a video camera, the companies, by classifying it as a DSLR and sort of turning off the capability after 30 minutes. The mirror flips back down and the video stops recording. So definitely would not suggest that as a number one choice. If you do have a bit more, sorry, it says 5D Mark IV at the bottom here, but that's actually a C100. It's not a 5D Mark IV, this one at least. Definitely suggest the C100, the Canon C100 Mark II. If you are looking for a more powerful camera that's going to be able to take your cinematic lenses, and it's also going to be able to take your news gathering lenses, and is just a video workhorse. So if you are doing a ton of video work, you're doing commercials, you're doing heavy-ended video production, but you kind of don't want to go for the full-on cinematic camera, the C100 I would highly recommend. I've seen it used in many Senate offices. The White House also uses them, I believe. I've used them myself. But yeah, so the C100 Mark II, which is this one right here. Sorry, it's mislabeled, but that definitely has the proper sort of run and gun, hit record quickly and do all those kind of things, kind of capabilities that you would need. In that sense. Next, lenses. What kind of lenses should I have? So right here, you'll most likely, if you buy a DSLR or if you buy one of these sort of consumer level cameras, you're gonna get a kit lens. You are welcome to use the kit lens. I would suggest you put it in your backpack and never take it out again. Just in the sense of the kit lenses tend to not be as good or as functional as some of the other lenses that are prime or sort of have more capability. And so again, not telling you to become, go out and get the best lens in the world that's going to be, a $5,000 lens, but kit lenses tend to sort of, again, if you're using it for vlogging, you could absolutely use the kit lens. If you're using it for, a proper sort of cinematic video and you're sort of creating documentaries, I would not recommend the kit lens. But yeah, for vlogging, absolutely use the kit lens. It's not going to hurt you at all, and it's only going to help you. But in terms of what kind of lenses should you have, would definitely recommend having 3 types of lenses at least, to be able to sort of hit all the various situations that you would need the lens for. You should at least have a wide lens or a semi-wide lens. So a 24-70 is a sort of semi-wide. It's a wide to semi-wide lens. And that's going to be that is really going to be your workhorse. So if you have, and again, don't mind the product names here. These are available for all kinds of Nikon makes them, Canon makes them, Sony makes them, Sigma makes them. So there's a lot of lens makers out there. So do not worry about the brand marks here. These are just for representation. So a 24-70, definitely having that is going to be your workhorse. I mean, cannot tell you how many times the 24-70 has been the main workhorse lens for almost a year of production in that sense, because you can take it wide, you can take it a little bit closer, and it sort of fits in the general sense of when you're trying to get B-roll, you're trying to get one-person interview or those kind of video productions. Definitely having a nifty 50, a 50 millimeter lens helps when you're trying to do more intimate video, when you're trying to do more up close and personal. You want to get that blurry bokeh effect in the background where you separate the person by having that sort of blur. So definitely a 50 millimeter lens. Canon makes them from f1.8 to f1.2. I have an f1.4 myself. Again, a nifty 50. If you're doing photography, if you're doing video, you want to get that sort of interviewee, very sort of cinematic blur effect. That's what I would suggest having a nifty 50 for. And also, it's a great practice lens if you're going around, walking around the street, doing street photography. It's great for that. For B-roll, definitely suggest having a 70 to 200 millimeter lens. That is really where, if you're focusing on a lot of B-roll, you're doing a lot of street style, run and gun, sort of photography, videography, not photography, videography. Having a zoom lens helps. Having a zoom lens definitely helps. I've got two of these, by the way, and I've used them to maximum effort in that sense. So yeah, definitely having sort of a wide, a mid, and a zoom lens would be a good recommendation from my end. But again, you don't have to go out and get 10 lenses. Like, definitely work your way towards them however you feel, whatever your need is. Suit the lens to your need, not the other way around. Again, Ernst Haas, who was a pioneer of color photography, I love this quote by him. Best wide angle lens. Somebody asked him what the best wide angle lens was at a workshop, and he said, take 2 steps backwards and look for the aha. And that really is, again, what kind of philosophical approach to creating video or to creating just content should be. It's not really about the material, the tool, and how expensive it is or how rare it is to find. It really is about how you use it. So definitely depends on you and on how you use the equipment. Audio. So number one, even more than all the other things I've shown you so far, audio is super, super, super important. If your audio is bad, if the audio on this live stream suddenly cut out, you would, or started getting distorted, you would just not be able to pay attention to what was going on in the video. Audio is so key. It's almost number one in that sense. Having good audios that people can listen to is really key. So, as I said, do not rely on your camera's internal mic. Use the right tools for the job. You don't have to go get the top cinematic, Hans Zimmer level microphone. I'm just using a basic microphone here for my own use, but in that sense, definitely think about the type of production you're creating and what kind of audio you're going to need. If you're interviewing someone, you're going to need a lapel mic, most likely. If you don't have a lapel mic and you just have that shotgun mic on top of your camera, and if you're in a relatively noise-free situation, you can absolutely use it. It's absolutely perfect. You don't need to take out the mic and snake it through their shirt and sort of have to worry about all of that kind of stuff. I mean, I can tell you, I'm sure everybody who's ever used a lapel mic has forgotten to take it off and then had to run back and go get it from somebody that they were interviewing. So, in a more mobile situation, having a boom mic on top of your camera can be so much better than a lapel mic. But again, if you're doing one of these sit down things, somebody sitting down in front of you in a stool, you can totally lapel them up. Having a wireless audio transmitter, again, depends on the situation. I think the Rode series of wireless mics and audio transmitters are really good. I found them to be really helpful and useful. But again, that's up to you. However, whatever equipment that you find best suited to your use. An external audio recorder, again, helps in the sense of a lot of times you can't run the mic from the top of your computer or your camera to your camera, and so a lot of times an external audio recorder can also help if the mic is sort of separated from the subject, especially for things like a lapel mic where you can just hook it up into the recorder, you give it to somebody, they can put it in their pocket if you don't have a wireless transmitter. So having an external audio recorder helps. You will have to sync up the audio in post, so make sure to not turn off your camera audio as well at that time. Recording at a lower level is definitely better in terms of your gain. You don't want to have completely messed up audio that was recorded into the reds in terms of the levels, because you won't be able to fix that. But if it's lower, you can definitely increase the volume. You can increase the gain after the fact. definitely want to make sure, again, to prevent those kind of audio issues, that you're monitoring the audio with headphones. If you've got it on an external audio recorder, plug in the headphones in the recorder. If you've got audio coming into your camera from an external source, definitely plug it into the camera to make sure that you're getting good audio levels. Also record room tones. So before you start recording, before you start the actual event, if you can, again, depends on the situation, right? Before you actually start the actual event, if you're in a room and you're recording a video in there, hit the record button, wait for a few seconds, and then start the actual event. And that way you'll have that room tone, which you can use as a reference after the fact to clean up the audio. So those kind of basic, simple things will really help you figure out, help you create good audio and make sure that you have, a proper sort of audio base to go with. Again, going into audio a little bit more, because I think mics are really important, and it really does help to have good audio. So in terms of, and mics have really come, so far ahead of anything else in terms of, video recording technology. I mean, there are so many mics on the market now, it's insane. So in terms of audio, I highly recommend getting a shotgun mic, even more than sort of the more professional boom looking mics, because you can easily mount them to the top of your camera, and or even to your iPhone. If you have an iPhone rig, a shotgun mic that's really small and lightweight like this is going to really help you out in that sense. If you are using it with a phone, make sure that you're using a TRRS connection, and if you have a USB-C or a Lightning port, then definitely make sure to get these adapters right here that are going to help you connect the mic to the phone. If you have a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, you can just use it with the regular cord. Some of these companies do sell, or they do include an iPhone sort of connector with their mics. Some of them do, some of them don't. So again, figure that out. This one right here, I actually have this right here. If I can show this to you, I have it right here. It's called the Movo VXR10. I think it's $20. I could be wrong. I think it's $20, $20 to maybe $30. It's super cheap. You can use it for everything. I've used it to cover press conferences and various kinds of events. It's definitely helpful. It's super easy. It's very good and easy to use on top of a camera or connected to a tripod or to a smartphone. Rode also makes some really great video mics. If you are a fan of Rode, you can definitely go get the Video Micro mic there. And then this is a more USB based Shure mic for smartphones. Okay, so having done audio, let's talk about tripods. Where are you going to put the camera while you're filming it? In terms of tripods, definitely want to direct you to two kinds of tripod heads, the thing that holds the camera up on the tripod. If you're using a travel tripod, if you're using a lightweight tripod, you'll most likely see a ball head, which is this ball right here that sort of enables you to move the camera back and forth and sort of adjust it with some tension. If you are doing more professional video and you want a lot of control over your camera so that it's not as jerky, because ball heads can be a little bit jerky. Again, they're designed for lightweight. They're designed for portability. If you're looking for more professional use of the camera and you have maybe a more heavyweight camera, definitely recommend getting a fluid head where the various knobs and buttons that you're seeing here allow it to move very smoothly and very sort of without a lot of jerky motion and sort of without, being able to pan the camera very smoothly, in television production is really important. So if you are going with the fluid head, highly recommend getting a quick release plate, because that way you can quickly take the camera on and off rather than having to fiddle with a lot of knobs. And again, depends on the kind of fluid head and tripod that you're getting. A lot of tripods come with fluid heads, and a lot of tripods just come as a tripod, and you have to add a head to it. So just make sure that you're getting a full sort of kit, that you're not having to buy extra kit after the fact, extra components. So the one tripod that I love, that I've used many times and still have and still continue to use it, is called a Mi Photo Road Trip. It's definitely super lightweight. It's I've taken it to Japan. I've taken it to India. I've taken it around the globe in that sense. And so it's really helpful. It comes with a ball head like this. You can see right there. And it also comes with a built-in quick release. So it's like the best of both worlds in that sense. And it's super lightweight. You can like hang it onto the back of your backpack. It's great. And you can also like flip it up and down, all kinds of things. You can take out the center block, use it as a monopod. Amazon also makes a really good, decent tripod that's super cheap. Manfrotto also has some really nice travel tripods. Again, they're lightweight. In terms of fluid heads, again, go with Manfrotto, go with some of the more professional Sackler or Ace tripods. Definitely do the research on them. I have personally tended to use, like I said, more of a mobile run and gun situation. So I favor the ball head tripod and sort of these lightweight tripods. I do know that people in the Senate and people in the White House, again, I've seen it myself, so that's why I'm talking about it. I'm not saying they endorse it, but I've definitely seen them using Manfrotto video tripod. Sorry, it's not a tripod; it's a monopod. So if you are really run and gun, for example, the people who do the White House's video, they have to cover the president, and so have to run around all the time while he's doing these events and he's moving around, so they don't have a lot of time to set up a tripod, and so they use a video monopod, which, as you can see, has a fluid head on top, and so it's another sort of sense of having the mobile portability at the bottom, and then having the sort of professional video head at the top, and they use that alongside of a C100, I believe, and the 24-70 Canon EF lens. So again, the professionals sort of tend to use this kind of equipment, and then again, that depends on you. You can mix and match. If you are looking for a more desk-based or a more, how would I say, even more super portable solution, definitely recommend Joby's Gorilla Pods. Joby is the Gorilla Pod initially started as just like a basic DSLR, sort of a twist and turn. You could kind of lock it into position, a small tripod, but now they've made a really amazing line of 1K, 2K, 3K kits where you can literally hang a microphone, you can hang lights, you can hang a giant heavy camera on the Gorilla Pod, and it even gives you the weight limit. So I think the 5K's weight limit is 5 kg. That's why it's called 5K, 2K, 3K. And so definitely the Joby line of Gorilla Pod. They're not going to be as tall as the tripods or monopods, but definitely in the sense of having that ability. If you can set it up on a table, again, depends on your situation. If you're vlogging or if you're doing these kind of sort of things where you don't need a long tripod, or even if you just want to sort of hold them up and sort of do a handheld kind of a thing, they're definitely helpful in that sense. Highly recommend those for sure. Lighting, important, but also a little hard to figure out. Some people tend to ignore them, especially because today you have these ultra super fast lenses. You have digital cameras with like really amazing sensors. So people tend to not want to use a lot of lighting and tend to favor the natural feel. So totally understand that. Having said that, I think you should have at least, especially if you're doing vlogging or you're doing sort of interviews and you kind of still want to have a mobile setup, would definitely recommend having at least one or two lights in your bag to be able to use and pull out. In that sense, if I right now the window that I'm looking at is to my right or to my left, but if I flip the camera around or if I flip the computer around, the light would be to my back, and then that would mean my face would go dark because the light is then hitting the back of my head and not the front of my head. So in that sense, number one, avoid backlighting your subject as much as possible. Please do not film in front of a window if you're interviewing somebody or if you're trying to get somebody's face in proper exposure. Just do not. So always be aware of your light source. I've got a light. I'm looking at a light behind the laptop as well, to be able to give me some more, to give me some more brightness. So definitely do not film in front of a bright source, and make sure that the source that you're filming, the source of light that you're using, is in front of you and not behind you. On-camera lights can definitely help you do that. Separate the background from your foreground. If you have a full-on light kit, you can see a 3-point lighting diagram right here. There's your object. Your object is facing ahead. You have your key light, which is going to have a certain amount of light. Your fill light, which is going to be your most maximum light, giving you the proper sort of fill effect, and then your backlight, which is going to light your hair and provide that separation from the background. Definitely a 3-point lighting diagram, having that, and make sure the lights are angled 45 degrees from each other. That will help you figure out when you're in a room, when you're in an area, how to set up your lights, how to set up your camera. And your camera should be here, obviously. Having said that, on-camera lights, the Aperture has amazing. I mean, it's an amazing brand. They have amazing lights for every use, from cinematic use to, down to sort of on-camera use. So Aperture Amaran it's actually a light that I've used myself, and I have been using. You can switch the colors on the Aperture from yellow to white, and sort of it has and now I think they have an RGB line coming out as well, so you can do sort of more pink lighting if you really kind of need it. But definitely it fits. It's got the cold shoe, and it can fit over your camera's hot shoe attachment. It can go onto any other hot shoe attachments as well. You charge it with the micro USB. And it's super, super portable. You can keep it in your pocket if you really need to. You can take it off. You can put it on anytime. It's really, really amazing piece of gear. If you do have a sort of a more mobile setup, or if you have a webcam and you kind of like, well, I don't need a huge piece of light, but I need a small piece of light so I can just be lit up and people can see me on the video conferencing, kind of a situation. Would definitely recommend these kind of smaller cube lights, like the Lume Cube and the Joby BMO. Lume Cube is really great too. And the cool thing about these lights is you can also group them together, so you can snap them together to create sort of a grid of 4 lights. And that way, if you really do need to, modify your lights and increase or decrease the light source, you can do that using these kind of smaller cube lights that snap together. So yeah, definitely having lighting is important. Mobile rigs. This is the brand new thing. As I said, Joby has some great kits in that sense, but other companies also, if you go on Amazon, if you go on B&H, are also selling these kind of similar mobile kits and rigs. And a lot of times they'll come with extra things, like they'll throw in a microphone for free or a light for free. But generally what you receive in these mobile rigs is you'll receive the tripod, you'll receive sort of the arms to be able to include accessories, and you'll receive a basic plate. And this one's for a smartphone, this one's for a DSLR. So you can see how far they've come, because back in the day you could only put a small smartphone or a lightweight camera on these, but now you can put all kinds of stuff on there. Definitely, recommend going and doing the research. You can build your own or buy a full kit. Like I said, Joby has a bunch of kits. The best thing about these kind of rigs is you can have them set up. You can, if you have professional equipment, but you're using it on a day-to-day basis, but you kind of need something smaller, you can create a go-to kit, and then just keep it together on the side, on your desk or in your room, wherever you need it, to be able to have it ready to go at a moment's notice. So when I worked for Mitch McConnell, a lot of times we would do press conferences, or we would do sort of these, on the minute things that had to be done very quickly. And so you didn't have time to pull out your camera or lift your equipment and sort of unscrew everything and set up everything. You just had to go with the flow. And so for that, I sort of had a mobile rig ready to go if I needed to film something really quickly, and just put my smartphone, snap my smartphone in the tripod, and then just go out and run into the hallway to do a press conference. So definitely helps to have a mobile rig ready, and yeah, don't take out the component and put it somewhere else. Just have it on the thing ready to go. For high-end mobile production. So if you are using iPhones and you're tired of using the iPhone's camera app, and you kind of want to do a little bit more extra, editing, or be able to have some more manual controls, or if you have a Pixel 4, or if you have any other Android device, would highly recommend getting the Filmic Pro app. It's a little bit convoluted, so I'm not going to go into the weeds on it in terms of how to use it, but you can kind of see there's a little circle for exposure, and then there's a little focus bracket here. You can set you can set your lighting in there. You can set your shutter speed. You can set your zoom. So it comes with some manual controls, and it also, if you pay like an extra $10 or something, they also allow you to film using a neutral mode, sort of be able to apply LUTs to you can basically film in RAW. But again, that depends on the kind of smartphone you have. I think it requires an iPhone 10 or above, at least in iOS, and in Pixel it requires, I think Pixel 3 or above. I could be wrong. But definitely having the Filmic Pro app, if you're doing sort of more mobile production and you sort of want to be able to film more proper video with a better codec and film in RAW, Filmic Pro is the app for you. If you want to do sort of more, as I said, you're trying to do maybe travel videos, you're trying to film your boss as he's walking down the hallway, and you don't have a lot of your tripod's kind of moving around a lot. Highly recommend getting a gimbal. Smartphone gimbals are really cheap these days. They're like $100 to $130. Most of them you can get even cheaper ones from China for sure, like Feiyu but the one that I've used myself is called the Zion Smooth 4 smartphone gimbal. DJI also makes a smartphone gimbal. You can just snap snap in your phone in there, and then you can also use it with like lenses and things like that. They're really easy to use, and once you have once you have them set up, you can just sort of turn it on and put the phone in and just be ready to go. What I have right here is a Zion Smooth 4. I don't know if you can see it. Let me see. Make sure you can see it. Yeah. So I have a Zion Smooth 4. You can see how big it is. It's got the little extra tripod in here. And all you do is you just kind of turn it on. And when you turn it on, this is where it's gonna move a lot because the phone's on here. But this is where the smartphone goes essentially. And then what I've also done is I've got the little microphone that I was talking about plugged into the side here, and then this, you can see this goes into my smartphone when I put it up here, and so when it's like this, so the smartphone sort of goes in there, and you can see I've got a little bracket here as well, and this bracket that you can see here, this bracket is what the mic is mounted on, and so that's, again, in terms of if you're trying to build out a rig, having these little things can really help you out. Just make sure it doesn't fall down. So yeah, you can see I've got a picture of this microphone or accessory mount basically that you can put on your gimbal. You can put it, so right here you can see this is a Zion. This is a DJI Osmo Mobile, so it doesn't just work on one brand. It works on a bunch of other brands. So if you have a gimbal, this sort of little accessory will really help you in terms of having lights or microphones. Having a splitter also helps because you can kind of see if you have the microphone there and then you have the cable going up there, and if the phone has to snap into this side here, then you really need that splitter, because that way the phone, the cord to the microphone isn't going to be twisted if you have it sort of put it in there, because the cord isn't going this way, the cord is going this way, and so having that right angle splitter is really going to help you out there. You can find those on eBay for like nothing, so yeah, or Amazon. So yeah, definitely helps to have that if you've got a gimbal set up. So additional video equipment, yes. If you do have money for it, some of these things are expensive, some of these aren't. If you do have the money for it, definitely having a camera monitor. You can buy one for $100, but there's some more expensive ones that allow you to record the video inside the monitor as well, like the Atomos Ninja brand. Definitely having a camera monitor helps because it helps you figure out your focus. So if you're doing on-camera work a lot and you've got your sort of system set up, you can definitely put a monitor on top, and sort of be able to figure out, because a lot of these cameras have really small screens and it's really hard to figure out where you're focusing from there. And definitely if you've got sort of on the go system, then having that small monitor, especially in bright sunlight, sometimes can hurt you. So having an external sort of brighter source that tells you with the bigger screen tells you where you're focusing really helps. In terms of a gimbal, yeah. So I also have a Zion Crane 2, but there's a bunch of other, like DJI also makes gimbals. These are more DSLR. This is a more DSLR or mirrorless camera-based gimbal. There's more expensive ones that cost insane amounts of money, but definitely having a basic. This is a DJI Ronin, yeah. This is a DJI Ronin gimbal. Definitely having a gimbal if you're doing more cinematic product, if you're doing sort of these cinematic videos with slow motion and sort of these sort of steady cam sort of looks where the camera is not really moving, but it's the shot is moving, but the camera isn't wobbling a lot. Having a gimbal helps again in that sense. Being able to use a gimbal, a ring light. If you're this sort of flies back into the talk about lighting. If you may not want to invest in a ton of lighting because you're just like, I don't know how to use it, this is going to be too expensive. A simple ring light, you can look for it on Amazon. Neewer makes a really good brand. There's a bunch of other companies that make ring lights, and especially if you're a beauty blogger, or if you just want to have a basic nice lighting source for your boss, that isn't going to be crazy expensive. Having a ring light helps. I'm using one right now. I'm looking at it, so you can kind of see it's not really giving me that ring light effect. It only does that if you're really close to it, and it also provides a good fall off for the background, so you can it's really good hack in terms of like, okay, I can't afford 3 lights, but I can definitely afford one, as long as it lights everything up nicely. If you are working with a lot of people who your bosses maybe do a lot of scripted work, or if you're doing a lot of scripts in terms of press conferences and sort of these kind of things, having a portable teleprompter helps. If you're doing a lot of speeches, having a portable teleprompter definitely helps. There's a bunch of companies that make teleprompters for anything as big as an iPad to anything as small as a smartphone. So having a portable teleprompter is definitely going to help you out in the long run, and help you figure out how to do scripted speeches, because let's be real, some of our bosses can't really talk without having having a script to read. So again, helpful if you need it in that sense. The company that makes this one, the one that I'm looking at, I think it's called Parrot. It's called the Parrot V2. But yeah, definitely go on B&H and Amazon and look for, just type in portable teleprompter and you'll see a bunch of options. See which one works for you, and try it out. And that's it for the presentation portion. Myself and John, and any questions that you may have, please, happy to answer any of those questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Anong. I know we had some technical difficulties with the stream, but Anong, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about, I know a lot of folks in the Capitol, they're shooting in the rotunda, or they're, kind of going outside of their office or shooting at the desk. What kind of tips do you have for folks that, like they're on the go and there's sometimes really poor lighting setups, like the desk is right in front of the big window behind them. So what kind of tips can you give officers in that regard?
Yeah, definitely. If you have, definitely having those smaller lights will change everything up, in the sense of what you want to use a light for. If you're using a light, is to be able to modify the lighting situation as it exists. And what you're really trying to do is create separation. So if you're filming your boss and if you're on a desk and there's a giant light source behind him, well, number one, just turn up the blinds. You know what I mean? Like, remove that lighting from the image as much as possible. And if that's not possible, then make sure to have a brighter light source in front of the subject, so that way the subject is separated from the background. If he's backlit and people can't really see them, that's really not going to be a good thing. So in that sense, having these sort of smaller lights, or sort of having even your sort of, sometimes I've seen people just use their, flashlight on their phone. I mean, that's helpful, but again, it's in one of those situations where you're kind of in a tough spot, and so you kind of want to have a second light source. You can just turn on the flashlight right there. But highly recommend getting a proper, either a ring light or a mobile light that you can set up at a moment's notice, and be able to sort of modify the light somewhat. If you sort of want to invest in some more stuff, you can definitely think about getting sort of the reflectors, those sort of fold out reflectors that they have. You can again look for those, and that way you can sort of either block or modify the light, because it's got a silver and it's got a black backing. So you can use the black backing to block the light, and you can use the silver backing to sort of reflect some of the light back in. That definitely helps.
Awesome. Yeah, that's super helpful. And I think that, you're always trying to be scrappy and find, whatever you have and use the light sources there.
Yeah, a lot of us are just one-man shops, and that's just how it is. If you're working for a congressman, you're working for a senator, they may not have a lot of staff to help you out with these things. So definitely, if you're planning for these kind of things, you're planning for equipment, make sure that you can use the equipment and set it up by yourself without having to have somebody else help you. Because when you're in that kind of tough spot, you may not have somebody to help you carry something to where you need it. So definitely, and then it's going to sit there and not be used. So definitely think about those kind of situations where you may need to have it, move it very quickly.
Absolutely. So one other question, I think, with offices, we know that budgets are tight. So if you had to prioritize something, lighting, sound, video, or camera, what is the number one thing that you would prioritize?
I would definitely prioritize having sound. Sound is important. So if you're working for your boss and your boss doesn't really have a huge budget for a camera, the least you can do is get a proper phone and a little mic right here and a little rig. That is not even going to cost you $100. I mean, that is the least thing you can do, is have a little tripod, a little iPhone to mount it on, and a little mic to be able to use the iPhones to be able to get proper audio out of it. Audio is so key. It's not even funny. Like I've done live streams where the audio was bad, and you just saw the audience numbers just plummet when they were so hyped up for this upcoming live stream. So audio is key, definitely. That's the number one thing, and the easiest thing you can fix, because it's so easy to tell when there's bad audio.
Awesome. No, I think that's super helpful in just prioritizing and even thinking about when you're watching your own videos. If the sound is all garbled and you can't hear anything, then you get turned off so quickly. So that's such a good note. So I'm not seeing any more questions here, but anything else for the good of the order? I know we learned some really great tips and tricks for production and kind of all of the tools that we might need. Kind of some high-end things, some things you can find on Amazon or eBay. So super grateful for all of that as well.
Yeah, definitely want to, like as I said, keep things simple. Don't sweat the big stuff. I tend to be a bit more perfectionist, so I totally understand that mentality. Like, oh my God, I don't have the right equipment. Use the equipment that you have. Test beforehand as much as possible so that you're familiar with whatever you're using. And yeah, last but not least, definitely want to make sure that you have our contacts, our email and addresses there. So that's me, and then this is John. So yeah, definitely do not hesitate to reach out if you have questions about equipment. If you just want to figure out any kind of production related issue, do not hesitate to reach out to us. We're here to help you on that.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much to both of you. I know I always learn a lot when we talk about all these tools, and I'm sure that the offices did as well. So thank you both. Make sure you tune into our live stream next week, Monday, same time, same channel, 2 p.m., Monday the 18th. And we'll be talking about ways that you can facilitate your town halls virtually. So make sure that you tune in next Monday, 2 p.m., right here on Events on Air. So we'll see you soon. Thanks so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.